Hello, friends. Welcome back to Courageous Leadership with Virginia Prodan. We are so happy you're here. We are so happy for all the comments, questions, suggestions that you are sending us for bringing your friends to our Courageous Leadership with Virginia Prodan. So, for those of you who are new, I'm Virginia Prodan, the host of Courageous Leadership with Virginia Prodan. I'm an international human rights attorney, a speaker, and an author, writer at Tyndale House Publisher, who published my book, Saving My Assassin. You can read the book, and you can find the book at virginiaprodanbooks.com/product/book. We love to have people that love the Lord, love the history, and they bring lots of ideas, maybe that we never thought about. And one of them is Jerry Newcombe. I have been friends with Jerry for a very long time, and he is returning to our Courageous Leadership with Virginia Prodan. He is the executive director of Providence Forum, and he has lots and lots of other. He's an author himself, and he loves to do lots and lots of things and encourage people. But his love is for history. Is that correct, Jerry?
Yes, it is. And American history is my key
Yes.
focus.
Yes. And I believe that right now in this society, where for so many years liberals are trying to brainwash our younger generation, I believe your contribution to tell them how important it is to know the real history of United States is absolutely amazing, and I'm grateful for your work.
Well, thank you very much. America is a great experiment of ordered liberty, but the key idea that helped give birth to America, even beginning with the settling era, let's say around the time of Jamestown, 1607, through the time of the founding era, 1776, with the Declaration of Independence, and then the U.S. Constitution, 1787. The whole experiment could be summarized in two phrases: self-rule under God. The Declaration of Independence, for example, explains why we exist. And the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence is coming up next year, July 4th, in 2026. And it says that God is the source of our rights. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with unalienable rights. And then it also talks about how the consent of the governed, that's the key. In other words, the people themselves are the ones who are in charge. That idea, of course, is summarized in the first three words of the Constitution, which came 11 years later, but which is predicated on the Declaration of Independence. So again, two key phrases: self-rule under God. That's the essence of the American experiment.
That is so true because our value is already given by God. The
Yes.
Bible tells us that we are precious in His eyes, that He created us a little bit lower than angels, and He gives us honors and glory. And it's said when people don't read the Bible, to find out that they are looking for value when they already have value. And based on that value, the words are self-reliance unto God. That's what exactly the situation is. You already have a value. Remain under Christ, because the Bible tells us in Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. And still you have people around that are victims. They are looking for government to give them, when the Lord is saying, I am your Lord, I provide everything for you.
Yes, and think about the example where you come from, and even it's written up in your book, Saving My Assassin, where you lived under communist Romania.
Mhm.
And the whole thing about communism, it all begins with the premise that's actually contrary to those two principles that are the core of America.
Yeah.
Not self-rule and not under God. There is no God, said the communists. And so they basically said, in effect, all men are evolved, and some are evolved more than others. And so there's a hierarchy, and the closer you get to the Communist Party and so forth, those are the ones who get all the favor. And they honestly, wherever communism has been implemented, the fuller they do it, the worse it is for the people. It's fine. It's great actually for the elites, the ones in charge who can be well fed and have nice homes and vehicles and stuff. But meanwhile, the people suffer and groan under that. In the American system, the founding fathers said, look, the Creator has given us these rights. They include the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That doesn't mean, nobody's guaranteed happiness, but at least here, theoretically, you should be able to pursue it. And they also said that, when they created the Constitution, one of the objections of some of the founding fathers that said, okay, we like this is a good document, but you need to add in writing a few guarantees of our rights. So they came up with the Bill of Rights in 1791, which are the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution. And the very first right that they said, this is very important for us, is the religious liberty right. And the reason why is because, honestly, you look at so many of the different colonies that were created in British North America, so many of them were motivated by God. The Pilgrims started the whole process. They just wanted to worship Jesus in the purity of the conscience. And the Church of England was officially forcing them to conform, and they didn't want to do that. And so they wanted to, just worship Jesus in the purity of conscience. They ended up going to America, getting to go to America. They were blown off course. So they were no longer under any government's jurisdiction. Some of the hired men that were with them to help them create this Bible Commonwealth in the New World were saying, hey, we're not under any authority. Once we land here in America, we can strike out on our own. Well, that would have been disastrous for the colony. And so what the Plymouth founders decided, the leaders, the Christian leaders, they said, well, they were all professing Christians, but they said, look, we're going to make an agreement for self-government under God. It's called the Mayflower Compact. And it became the first step to the creation of self-rule under God in America. It begins in the name of God. Amen. And they talk about how, having undertaken a voyage for the glory of God and the advancement of the Christian faith, we covenant and combine ourselves into a civil body politic. Well, that document written in the cabin of the Mayflower, before 1 foot of those people were set on the new soil, that was agreement. The men signed it, as was the custom of the day. And that, in effect, began the whole ball rolling. It culminated 150 years later with the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution, all predicated on the biblical foundation. And in between the Mayflower Compact and the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were many documents that were along the same lines. And they were all ultimately drawn from the biblical concept of covenant. God made a covenant with his people. He made a covenant with Abraham in Genesis 17 and so forth. And a covenant basically is a sacred type of agreement binding the people together, but with God. And so the God factor is critical. That's why to this day, we are one nation under God. Now, I know there's a lot of people who don't like that, and they're doing everything they can to try and, cut us off from our biblical roots as a nation. But that's what has given us the freedom that we enjoy. And so, Virginia, I've been writing about this and making films about it and having podcasts with people like you talking about it, and my good friend Bill Federer and so forth. But bottom line is, people who like freedom should realize that if you really finally succeed in cutting us off from our Judeo-Christian roots as a nation, then you will have succeeded in cutting us off from our freedoms. And maybe the next generation, you will have succeeded in them being killed. I mean, communism has a horrible track record.
Absolutely. And you said something very important and I want to underline. You said America is the best experiment was ever created because it was created under the banner of God. And yes, it's true that there are some rewards for obeying God. And freedom and joy and prosperity comes from God. The Bible tells us, I am your God. And he said, I will save you, I will protect you. There are so many promises in, but there are also consequences of disobedience. And
Yeah.
those people that are disobedient, that want to take us away individually or as a nation from God, first of all, they fight against God and then against us. And if we look under this perspective, um, you feel, or I always feel protected because there is no human in the history of the universe that fought against God and won. God always wins. So yes, those people like the dictator in communist Romania who reigned for 40 years, and the totalitarian regime was more than 50 years in Romania, 70 close to 80 years in Russia, it's still in China. Yes, when the communist establishes, it will be for a period of time, but God puts an end to that. But the problem is that those people that are trying in America to accommodate the culture, they don't realize that in fact, they want to put themselves under the cage that the government will create for them because there will not be freedom. And the fact that they will have to worship the government. They think right now that they don't want to worship God, but they will want to worship a government who will put them in prison, and they will be like puppets. So I believe it's very important what you are doing, because I believe not only present people that maybe never had the desire to learn a little bit more about the American history, but our new generation is brainwashed in college and university. They are not taught about what you just said, the
Mhm.
steps in American history, and they are told about how horrible this country is. So when you think about this, what you are doing, your love for America, your love for people to teach them how America started and everything, I believe it's more important than ever before.
Well, thank you so much. And in fact, at providenceforum.org, which is really the umbrella website of Providence Forum, we try to inform people through articles, videos, podcasts, quizzes, kind of test your knowledge about America's true history and so forth. But I do want to give a shout out. There's a man named Dr. Peter Lillback, and Peter Lillback was the founding president of Providence Forum. And he got so busy because he's the president also now of Westminster Theological Seminary in Philadelphia, and he donated Providence Forum to Coral Ridge Ministries, which was founded by Dr. D. James Kennedy and now is led by Dr. Robert J. Pacienza. A lot of doctors here,
Yeah.
but bottom line is, I mention this because he, his goal was that this message keep, uh, you know, reaching out, especially to the next generation. And I got to work with Peter Lillback, where he and I wrote a book together about the faith of George Washington. It's a real big, thick book. At first, it was a joke around the office because the book was so thick, called George Washington's Sacred Fire, but it ended up becoming a bestseller. And so, thankfully it got out there to a lot of people. And it showed that, look, George Washington, the father of our country, was, an 18th century devout Anglican and all that entails. He was not some sort of unbeliever or a deist who thought that, well, if there is a God, but he's not like the kind of God we find in the Bible. That's just not true. George Washington was a huge reader of the Bible. He was a huge reader of the Book of Common Prayer, 1662 version, in his Anglican communion, and he loved that. And in fact, there's an appendix that Dr. Lillback put in this book about and it's Appendix 2, and I just marvel at this. It's called George Washington and the Bible, and all it does is he decided, Dr. Lillback decided to break down all the different times in which you find biblical phrases in the words of George Washington. This includes public speeches, private letters, public letters, all kinds of different documents. And bottom line is we see, wow, the Bible really, was very important to George Washington. And you know what his favorite Bible verse was? His favorite Bible verse was Micah 4:4. And every man shall rest under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make them afraid. George Washington viewed America as a place like that, a place where every man could rest under his own vine and fig tree. And in fact, he wrote letters to 3 of the known synagogues, which it was rare in some countries to have Jewish synagogues. But here in America, people were free to believe because of the Christian foundation of this nation. And he wrote them, and he quoted that verse, at least in 1 or 2 of those letters, Micah 4:4, the point that, hey, here in America, you are free and there should be nobody to bother you. Now, look, Virginia, look what's happened in the last year or two, where we've seen ungodly, anti-Christian, anti-Jewish philosophy taking over even some of our leading universities, which were founded initially by Christians for Christian purposes. Harvard, Columbia, which was originally called King's College. And Jews aren't even safe there. Every man is not safe under his own vine and fig tree in the godless America that some are trying to impose on this nation. But I say, let's get back to our roots. And that's what we're doing here at Providence Forum.
Let me ask you about this. What do you think is the most important role of a parent to a child before the child reaches the years of going to college? How they can implement the love of God into their children, and also inspire them to read and to know the history of America?
Well, I would say first start with the love of the Bible, the love of God. If you begin to read the Bible and begin to know the Bible, and then you read, let's say, founding fathers, even founding fathers that might not have been completely orthodox in their views, you see that the Bible informed the worldview of those people. I mean, Ben Franklin, for example, he was not completely orthodox in his views, and he's an exception in that sense as far as the founding fathers are concerned. And yet, at the Constitutional Convention, he made an impassioned speech along the lines that we should pray. And they didn't directly say yes or no to the way he suggested they do it, but the spirit of what he asked for, that they prayed together, was fulfilled within a week or so as they met in a local church and prayed. That little speech that he gives on June 28, 1787, is filled with little biblical phraseologies. If a sparrow cannot fall down without God's notice, can an empire rise without his aid? I have lived, sir, a long time, and the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this, that God governs in the affairs of men. Except the Lord build the house, they that labor, labor in vain. Psalm 127. So That, you know what? There's a late,
Those when you set those Bible verses, young people, young generation have no clue and no understanding how God's word gives you confidence that you are
yeah,
not here by mistake, that there is a God who takes care of you. There is an order in this universe, and God is the order of the universe, and you are here for an amazing purpose. And when you see them allowing themselves to be brainwashed, they are like leaves,
yes,
going everywhere, and no wonder why the suicidal is it's so high.
yes.
Of them
And
don't have a purpose. When they go to work, they don't want to respect the hierarchy. They believe that they know everything and they are entitled. All those things are already destroying them.
right.
I
No, it's very true. And they become miserable and unhappy and so forth. The
Yes,
other side of it is that if they can come to know the truths of the Bible, and then also the truths of American history, it can make a huge difference. America's not perfect, no question about it. There are a lot of flaws even from the beginning. But the experimental ideas, and again, basing everything on God has made a huge difference. So, what, for example, if you look at some of the videos that we've made, where we talk about uh, so many of the founding fathers, I like what this one professor said from the University of Houston. He died about a year ago, Dr. Donald S. Lutz. But he said that all the founding fathers, even the couple of them that might not have been orthodox in their theology, they all knew the Bible. They knew it down to their fingertips. He said, what was the mass media during the days of the American Revolution? It was the pulpit. It was sermons that were written down, that were circulating throughout the colonies. What was the great formative movement that happened a generation before the American War for Independence? It was the First Great Awakening, brought on again by preachers who were preaching the gospel. Most notably, Jonathan Edwards, who started all this in New Hampshire. I'm sorry, in Northampton in Massachusetts, but George Whitefield, coming from England, helped spread it all up and down the coast. And so, anyway, in my videos, I have Dennis Prager and Eric Metaxas and Oz Guinness and Peter Lillback and Bill Federer and Elvita King and all kinds of people talking about how, wow, you really can't understand America unless you understand the Judeo-Christian heritage that helped give it birth. If you like our freedoms, you need to realize this wasn't a happy accident.
yes, exactly. And the Bible tells us that you will know the truth. The truth is Jesus Christ, and the truth shall set you free. There is nothing in this world that will set you free. So I will say, and I will hope that people will pay attention to the way they listen to God's word, uh, the way they obey God, and the way they will submit to the culture who is against God, because the evil one from the beginning started with lies and everything. So it's not very easy. But to me, I believe it's very important that parents take time from a younger age to
Yes.
introduce their children to the Bible, to read the Bible with them, to take them to,
Yeah.
and most of all, to live before them a godly life. So, and let the kids to have a strong relationship with Christ. Then, when they go to school, when they go to college, nobody will take them away from Christ. But also, I agree with you that It's very important for parents to go to your website and share with their kids and see those videos, and also take them during summertime, during vacation, to those historical times and
Yes.
moments in America, because there is a reason why they are there. There is a reason. Those will remain in their children's memory and mind for a very long time, and nobody can do that. The
Yes.
next generation, the Bible tells us that generation after generation will know about the Lord. It doesn't say that the generation in America. If we turn our back to God, God will find another way. We have been blessed in America and have been in reach and have freedom and prosperity because for generation we obey God. And even people that did not believe in God, they have a fear and a reverence of God, but they were not against Christians. Now we have another situation where people in government and liberals are openly, they pride themselves from putting down Christian and turning their back to God. So we have to make sure that we help the next generation to be
Yes.
strong and courageous and build them up from the younger generation. Do you agree with
Oh,
that?
I totally agree. In fact, at providenceforum.org, we're in the process of creating a curriculum for the next generation. We're beginning with the homeschool group, just because there's a lot of people that are looking within the homeschool movement, for new information and so forth. It's new information based on old realities, like what we were talking about earlier, the Mayflower Compact and the Declaration of Independence. And, when you were talking about visiting these different places, you're absolutely right. I mean, you just look at some of these things and you see, for example, the Liberty Bell. Well, the Liberty Bell has one statement on it other than who made the bell, and that is a Bible verse: proclaim liberty throughout the land and to all the inhabitants thereof. And it's a Bible verse that comes from Leviticus, of all books. So, bottom line is, America has a rich Christian heritage, and it's not just fancy, interesting little facts about history. No, 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 no. It has, absolute implications in terms of how we are governed and how we rear our children, how much freedom we have, and so forth. We are blessed because of those Christians who sacrificed before us to make sure that we would have this freedom. I like to say it this way: America began as a Christian nation, and because of that, people of all faiths or no faith are welcome uh, to be here and practice what they want. But they shouldn't be allowed to turn around and say, no, 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 America is not one nation under God, and try and cut us off, sever us from our roots, our Christian roots, which is what has made us free.
Well, Gary, we have lots of things to do and be working on. So, again, the website that people can go to, please say it again.
Providenceforum.org,
Okay.
a
Thank you
division of
so
Coral Ridge Ministries.
Thank you so very much. And I believe you are so right. If we don't do the work, then we're going to find ourselves in a country like I grew up in socialist and communist, because that's what these people try to do, to brainwash young people and to think that communist is the best place for them. America is wrong. And I have to tell you, if you don't believe me, read this book, Saving My Assassin, and you will understand the atrocities of socialists and communists, what the socialists and communists can do to you and me. And you will agree that the freedom that we have in America is precious, and we have to stand up for freedom and help the next generation to recognize and to embrace America's freedom. Thank you so very much, Jay, one more time. Appreciate your presence here, and we hope to have you again.
Thank you, Virginia. I look forward to it.
Thank you so much. I hope to hear from you and to tell us what you learn and what God is doing through you to keep America free. God bless you. Bye-bye.